Like it or love it, sanding is an important part of woodworking or refinishing any project. To get that really smooth finish on here is the only way you can do it really is by sanding. So today it's all about sandpaper. Welcome back to the shop. I said in the last episode that not much is going on at the cottage in the wintertime, although on this fine January day it feels more like spring than winter. But we're working in the shop. We're getting some projects done and we're kind of moving along in that direction. So I thought I would take a little bit of time to talk about sandpaper. Now, I have a confession. I have to start with this confession. I suffer from chronic disorganization. If you look around my shop, I don't know how much of it you can see from this camera angle. Let me move out of the way. I just have stuff kind of everywhere. And I'm always looking for something. I'm especially always looking for my tape measure because I put it down and I can't remember where I put it. So I have 3 or 4 of them laying around just in case. But I suffer from chronic disorganization, especially when it comes to sandpaper. It's usually tucked in a drawer somewhere in the workbench, and I never know if I have 220, if I have 180, if I've got 60, or how much I have, and I'm in the middle of a project and I run out. So the other day, I came across this little beauty right here. This is a countertop display, 3M company sandpaper, with all of these little cubbies in it. And I was going to build one of these, but I found one. I found one for sale, so I bought it. A little bit about this. It's vintage, as best as we can tell based on the logo. This logo, this 3M company logo right here, came into being with 3M in 1961, and it lasted till 1978. So we can place this piece anywhere from 1961 to 1978. All right, so it falls into that vintage category. And but hopefully this is going to keep me organized. I've already loaded it up with all my various shapes and sizes of sandpaper. I have stuff that I bought that's pre-cut that goes on my palm sander. There's full sheets. Then there's some of these other sheets that I inherited from somewhere that went on a different size sander that I no longer have, but they still work great. It came with a couple of different kinds of sandpaper. One of them was this big package of sanding discs here. And you can see there's a price on it that says 10 cents a piece. So I'm not sure how old these are, but I'm not sure you're buying sandpaper for that. I don't think you can buy it loose anyways, but this display would have been at the point of sale or even maybe in the aisle, and it would have individual sheets of sandpaper in it, and you bought sandpaper by the sheet. On the side, there's notes here. It says fine was 9 cents, medium was 10 cents. And then as we go up, or I should say as the number goes down, the price goes up. Needless to say, you can't really buy individual sheets anymore that I know of. Maybe at a local place you can, but you buy it in a pack. And anyway, so all my sandpaper is in here. But I got to thinking, because I'm a geek, right? And I got to thinking about sandpaper, and I'm like, oh, how long has sandpaper been around? Well, 12th century. 12th century in China. 12th century in China. Carpenters, joiners, guys that worked with wood, whatever, would take sand, crushed up seashells, try to say that a few times fast, and also seeds. And they would stick them onto something. They would press them, take a board or something else and press it down into it, and they would make this rough surface, and they would go over the wood surface with it to make it smooth. How it works, now see, we're really geeking out because we're going to talk about how sandpaper works. I didn't really even know this until just now. I mean, I just take a piece of sandpaper and make it work, right? But the sharp edges on here, I'll be able to see it on this grit because this is a good grit, right? So the sharp edges on here, and these sharp edges cause friction. So between the sharp edges and the friction on the wood, it takes care of that sort of uneven top layer. So here, you can see it again. So it's uneven, it takes care of that top layer. Now, modern sandpaper is not made from sand anymore, and actually the backing is not even paper. The backing is either cotton or some other synthetic fiber. So it's neither sand nor paper. So I don't know why we still call it sandpaper, but be that as it may, it's sandpaper. But it's made from aluminum oxide, or you can see on here, it says garnet flint, aluminum oxide. This one, it doesn't really say on it, but there's some in here that is aluminum oxide. Now, the other interesting thing is that although we might think of this as an abrasive or as a finishing tool, it's actually considered a cutting tool, much like a saw or a chisel. The only difference is you can't sharpen it. So this is a one-off, right? So when you're sanding, it creates dust, or at least it looks like dust. But if you were to put it under a microscope, you would get in there and look at all of that. You would see that it's actually tiny shavings, almost like you would get with a hand plane if you were using a hand plane. Tiny shavings, and these are called swarf, S-W-A-R-F. So yes, actually everything apparently does have a name. So we call these things swarf. Now, we talked about the 12th century, but we got to jump up to the 19th century. So in the 1800s, glass actually was used as the grit. It was glass. So, and it was called glass paper. So same sort of procedure, except they were no longer pressing the glass into a board or something else. They were using an adhesive, and we put it on paper. In 1833, John Oakley in London started using the adhesive process. So from 1833 to present day, we're using an adhesive. And it also started the process of mass manufacturing. So it wasn't anymore was the carpenter making his own paper. He was now able to go somewhere to a store or whatever. No online, no Amazon. This is 1833 in London. And thus was born what became known as glass paper. The biggest innovation in glass or sandpaper came on June 14th, 1834 in Springfield, Vermont. There was a bloke in Springfield called Isaac Fisher. And Isaac Fisher got a patent for a machine to manufacture sandpaper. So it was no longer called glass paper. It was called sandpaper. And he got a patent on a machine to make sandpaper. And it's still, although the mechanism has changed a bit, it's still the same process that's used today. There's a backing, which again is either cotton or some other synthetic fiber. Adhesive is placed, and then whatever the aluminum oxide, flint, garnet, whatever it happens to be, is then placed on it. So the lower the number, the thicker or the grittier, I guess you could say, I don't know what the exact word is, the grittier the grit. And so it makes it gives you a more rougher sanding. The higher the number, the highest one I have here is 400, but it goes much higher. I've seen 1500, and the particles get smaller and smaller and smaller. Of course, in the coarser grit, the grit is further apart, so it leaves more room for the swarf to go. Because if you've ever sanded, especially a painted surface, then you look at the sandpaper, it's all gummed up. In fact, I have an example right here. You can see that it gets all gummed up. So the swarf gets caught in the grit, and it clogs up your paper. Now you can, if it doesn't get too bad, you can use another piece of sandpaper on it, and it will remove some of it. But if it's really caked on like this, it just has to get thrown away. You can't resharpen it. You really can't clean it. It just has to get thrown away, and you have to buy some more. So, sandpaper. Who knew? Who knew that we had all of this stuff about sandpaper, and that it's been around that long, and how it's made? It's something that we just take for granted, and we grab a piece of it, and we slap it on the side of something, and we sand. So again, either love it or hate it, sanding is an important part of the process. Hope you liked it. If you did, click the little thumbs up down below. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Ding the bell, and you'll get notified when I put a new episode out. I haven't forgotten about the cabinet project that we started in the last video. We're still working on that, and we're going to get back to that soon. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.